Hey guys, welcome to Did You Get That on Film? On this podcast, we deep dive into horror movies, and so it is full of explicit content as well as spoilers. Please be advised. Now, let's get to the show.
This is Did You Get That on Film, where we discuss characters and terrible situations that we would never find ourselves in. I'm DP, your host, and with me always is one of my closest friends, my best friend, because she's someone who would never pick up a hitchhiker.
Hell no!
And for that, I can never replace her. My girl Ruth. Ruth, what's up?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode.
Oh my God. I know what you're going to say, why they did it.
It
but
was the 70s. But like, in all seriousness, in the 70s, hitchhiking was huge. So
I understand that, but no.
I know, no, I mean, it could never be me. It just wouldn't be me.
I don't even like to really Uber, to be honest.
No, I don't like being in close proximity
With
to strangers. So, no. But yeah, so in case you guys are wondering what the hell we're talking about today, we're talking about the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. And this is going to be the fourth and final film in our Hellbilly Deluxe movie series. So we started with the two Rob Zombie movies. So we did Devil's Rejects and then the Halloween remake 2007. And then we also did The Hills Have Eyes. And now this is a movie that influenced all of those movies. It influenced both of those directors, Wes Craven and Rob Zombie. This is kind of the movie that kind of started it all. So Texas Chain Saw Massacre was released in 1974. It was directed, produced, and co-wrote by Tobe Hooper. And then the other writer is Kim Henkel. And Kim Henkel would actually go on to write and direct Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, which is a wild one for sure. But he has been a part of all the remaining movies in the franchise in some capacity. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise includes 9 movies. The latest installment was actually just released in 2022. I have not seen that one, but people actually do seem to really like it.
Mm-hmm.
The franchise includes sequels, prequels, remakes, reboots.
Sides, biscuits, and a pepper.
There's also comics, a novel, and 2 video game adaptations. One recent video game adaptation, which also seems very, very popular. The movie was actually made on a pretty low budget. So, adjusted for inflation, the movie was made for about $800,000 to $880,000. But it grossed $200 million. And that is adjusted for inflation. That is wild for a movie like this. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
For a movie like this, I am shook that it made, like, what a return on investment. That's wild. But one of the things that contributed to this movie being such a huge success is that, really in a stroke of genius, so the movie was presented, the marketing for it was kind of like a documentary style. And it has like documentary style camera work, but they said that the movie was based on true events. Even the opening scroll in the beginning of the movie, it makes you feel like this is something that really took place, something that really happened, which is not the case. There's like some minor details about Leatherface that were inspired by the murderer Ed Gein, but overall the plot is actually just a fictional plot. But it kind of tapped into, I guess, maybe that true crime itch that a lot of people have. Even before that was like a huge thing. And I think that that's probably what made it the hit that it ended up being. So, are you ready to just get started?
Yeah.
Okay, so the film opens up with this now iconic crawl, very Star Wars-esque, but it is explaining that what we as the audience is about to see is based on one of the most, quote, bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, and that has been dubbed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we then get some on-screen text with the date August 18th, 1973. And the screen remains black, except every now and then there's the flash of a camera bulb, which reveals a shot of a dead and mummified body. Then we cut to a very gruesome display of corpses. So this is the next morning. And we learn through a news broadcast that's playing over the scene that some grave robbers apparently broke into the cemetery the night before and dug up a lot of corpses. A couple of them, they tied together and posed them in front of a monument for the local residents to find. The news report goes on to say that another corpse was discovered in a ditch close to the cemetery, and nearly a dozen graves were reportedly robbed. Some with whole bodies missing, some with only parts missing. Then we get the title card and the opening credits, with a news broadcast just kind of still playing over the scene. So then the camera cuts to a van pulling over on the side of the road, with the news broadcast actually coming from their radio now, which was a clever little thing. But this is where we meet our protagonist of the movie. So we have Sally Hardesty, her wheelchair-bound brother Franklin Hardesty, her boyfriend Jerry, their friend Kirk, and Kirk's girlfriend Pam. The group is actually pulling over so that Franklin can pee on the side of the road in a coffee can. And Kirk helps Franklin down his ramp. And as he's about to pee, this 18-wheeler drives by. And I guess it's like a little too close to them because it shoots dirt up into Kirk's face. But also for some strange reason, it causes Franklin to fly out of his wheelchair and then roll like 20 feet down into an embankment. I'm laughing because you're laughing.
There's just so many times in the movie, it's just like they just really made him just the punching bag.
So we're going to talk about this as we continue through the movie. Franklin is
The worst.
the fucking worst. I cannot stand Franklin. I mean, he is really, really insufferable from start to finish. The way that he complains, the way that he whines,
Talks. It's just everything.
everything.
The questions he asks. The fact that he takes up space. Just
I
everything.
know, a lot of fucking space. It's just he also has like a sense of entitlement. The fact that he's even on this trip, it's just a lot.
And then you're a fifth wheel.
That's right. You are a fifth wheel.
On four wheels.
The nerve.
Just goddamn nerve.
There's a scene. Okay, let's keep going because I really cannot wait to just really talk shit about Franklin. I'm very, very eager to do it because this was a character that I could not root for at all. So Franklin is on the ground in shambles. Kirk rushes to help him up. He just It's like he just fucking never recovers from this little tossed down an embankment. They load him back up to the van. They're on their way. In the van, Pam is trying to school Jerry on the consequences of Mercury being in retrograde. When the group stops at a cemetery, this is the same one where the grave robbers hit the night before and stole all those corpses. So we learn that Sally and Franklin's grandfather is buried in this cemetery. And they just want to make sure that his grave was not one that was disturbed. For some reason, every single person at this cemetery is a drunk, sloppy mess. But they are able to walk her to her grandfather's grave. It's fine. It hasn't been disturbed at all. So they head back to the road. They start driving again. And then they start to smell something fucking funky. Now, they're in a big passenger van.
The Mystery Machine.
Thank you. That's exactly what it's like. So it's the equivalent of the Mystery Machine. And really, the only windows that actually go down are the driver side and passenger side windows. There's 4 windows on the actual van part. It's 2 on each side. And they're those kind of windows that just kind of like
pop.
Yeah, they pop open. They don't roll down. So the air circulation in this van is low. There's no AC. Franklin is sweating fucking grenades. He's so fucking sweaty. I know that it's probably really funky in the van anyway, but in addition to that funk, they're getting whiffs of something really fucking disgusting. Well, that's when Franklin looks around and he spots the old slaughterhouse where their grandfather used to sell his cattle. That's where the stench is coming from. He then goes on to explain how they had an uncle that worked at a slaughterhouse and they used to bash the cattle in the head with a big sledgehammer to kill them, and how the cattle would freak out and scream, and they would have to bash them in the heads 2 or 3 times to kill them. So the group is really upset about this because Franklin, bro, we're on a fucking road trip. What the hell are we talking about right now? But Franklin's like, no, it's okay. They don't use that method anymore. They now use a large aerosol gun to shoot the cows in the head and kill them quickly. And then he starts demonstrating it over and over and over again. And I was like, I don't know how y'all haven't sat him on the side of the road yet.
With a sign that says for free.
Free? He's so insufferable. So then the group notices, kiss of death, a hitchhiker on the side of the road, and they debate whether or not to pick him up.
It's just hot. And Franklin is taking up a lot of space because his chair takes up a lot of space. We just don't have the space.
We don't have the space because additionally in the van, they've repurposed it to be able to kind of, 1, fit Franklin, and 2, kind of lounge a bit in the van. So the van doesn't have seats beyond the passenger and driver's seats. It's just kind of like an open seating area. They're all really kind of crammed in there without enough barriers between everybody's funky ass, nasty ass, sweaty ass, hot ass body. So to pick up a hitchhiker in this environment, to me, seems silly. But Kirk says they should absolutely pick him up because it's sweltering outside and they're like, the guy will probably pass out from heat. Franklin and Pam are like, I don't think so. This guy looks very, very weird. And he's probably funky too because he's been sweating next to a fucking slaughterhouse for God knows how long, waiting for a ride to come. Jerry decides to stop and pick him up. He's in the van. Now, inside the van, we see that Pam was not lying. This dude is really fucking weird looking. So, beyond having a birthmark on his face that takes up a large portion of one side of his face, he's really kind of just like gross looking. Like he's kind of greasy. Yeah, he's just kind of, he's greasy. He's been sweating. He looks kind of dirty. He's really fidgety. It's making everybody kind of nervous.
He out here asking for rides.
Next to a slaughterhouse. So around his neck is a camera. Also around his neck is some kind of, it's like a furry animal skin pouch that I guess he's kind of using as like a purse. He says that he is coming from the slaughterhouse. He doesn't work there anymore, but his brother and grandfather work there, and his family's always been in meat. So when Franklin asked the hitchhiker if he's ever seen any of them use the aerosol gun to kill the cows, this guy is like, the aerosol gun sucks because it put people like me out of business. Because this is when he reveals that he used to be on the killing crew and used the sledgehammers on the cows. So you know he's a freak. That's when he pulls some little Polaroids out of his animal skin pouch, and it shows the dead animals at the slaughterhouse in various stages of being prepared for meat.
How interesting that you carry those pictures with you.
I was like, what is this supposed to be telling us?
That we should have picked his ass up.
It's very bizarre that somebody would pull these out to show them off. And so I just feel like all of this is really indicative of the fact that something's really off about this guy. And I feel like they wait too long to address how bizarre
he is.
Yeah. You know, and I get it. It's really hot. It's in Texas. It's probably in like the 90s. They're worried about the guy being on the side of the road.
Are you?
I mean, Kirk is worried. He was like, oh yeah, you know, he's going to have like a fucking heat stroke out there. And I'm like, Kirk, I think he'd be okay. I promise you. I promise you he would be okay.
He better go sit inside.
That's what I'm saying. Just go back to the fucking slaughterhouse. So he then starts talking about, so random, how they don't throw away the heads of the dead cattle, but instead they use the heads to make head cheese.
Hog head cheese.
Dante.
Almost.
So this is cow head cheese. But that's so funny because when he was describing it, so this is what he said. He's like, they take the head, they boil it, they scrape the flesh and to the bone, and they use every bit, the muscles, the eyes, the ligaments, everything. They kind of grind it up to make a jelly that they then use to make head cheese. And that sounds really fucking gross. And Franklin's like, oh yeah, I fucking like head cheese. And I'm like, Franklin, you would. But then it's like I had to laugh because my grandma used to fuck up hog head cheese.
Because they grew up in a depression? Is that what it is?
I guess.
Because my grandparents like that.
And like for people that don't know, it is called head cheese, but it's obviously it's not in fact like cheese, right? It is not a type of cheese. It is
it's a type of deli. It's almost, you know, like we laugh and joke, but it's almost like pate.
That's exactly what it's like. It's like a very like poor man's pate. That's pate. Exactly what it's like.
It's not chicken livers. It's like you know, eyes.
Yeah. It's like eyes and fucking muscles and shit.
I would rather eat hog head cheese than eat potted meat. And I think we talked about potted meat before, and I really don't like potted meat.
I don't like potted meat either.
But you gotta pick one in this story. This is the game. You gotta pick one.
But this is the thing. When I was younger, before I really knew what it was, I did eat head cheese. I ate hog head cheese. Because my grandma bought it, and when you are young, you eat what is bought and in the refrigerator. And so she used to make hog head cheese sandwiches.
It's a kitchen, not a diner.
Exactly. And so I'd have to eat that shit. Looking back on it, I'm so disgusted, but yeah. So I'm like, yeah, you know, I ate it. It was fine.
But Franklin, big ass.
Franklin's like, yeah, I eat that shit. I'm like, Franklin, shut the fuck up. Shut up. So then, silly, for some reason, Franklin pulls out a knife and just kind of starts picking his nails with it, just kind of playing with it in front of this stranger who is clearly thrown off. Right? Like, I'm not being mean. I'm not even looking at it with like hindsight. This dude is like on another level. And then he just allows this guy to just take the knife from him. Like the guy just reaches out, takes the knife from Franklin. Then the guy, he starts giggling, and then he slices his hand wide open. Blood running down his arm. Everyone is appalled, but he thinks it's funny. I just feel like I know that we wouldn't be in this situation because we never would have picked this person up, but in this moment, wouldn't this be the thing that you'd be like, okay, you have to go.
You gotta get the fuck out of here. Stop the car.
Stop the car right fucking now. I just feel like they just wait too long. So he hands his knife back to Franklin. Then he pulls his own knife out of his sock. And it's more like a straight razor, but he's showing everybody and he's like, this is a good knife. And Kirk is like, I'm sure it is, man, but put that shit away. Everyone is clearly alarmed, but not fucking alarmed enough because he's still in this van. The hitchhiker then puts his little knife away and he pulls out his camera and he takes a picture of the group. And then he invites them to his house, which he says is really close. It's just off the road that they're on. And he says that they can have dinner with his family. His brother apparently makes really great head cheese.
This is so creepy to listen to.
It's creepy thinking about it, knowing what you know, like in retrospect after you get to the end of the movie. It's very crazy.
Because he does make head cheese.
Sure does. But this group is not a total bunch of fucking dummies. They do end up saying something that I would probably say in this situation if I ever found myself in it. Sally's like, well, if your house is so close, why don't you just walk then? She said, why don't you just take your ass home? What the hell are we driving you for? And that is so funny to me because I was thinking about House of a Thousand Corpses. Remember when their car stops and Baby's like, well, I'll just walk to my house. It's close. And we're like, why the fuck didn't you walk in the first place? So Kirk is like, well, sorry, we can't come to dinner. We're like really in a rush. We really got to get moving. And he's a little offended, but he takes a look at the Polaroid that he just took of them and he smiles and he hands it to Franklin. And Franklin just looks at it and he's like, didn't turn out so good. And I'm like, Franklin.
Because your stupid ass was in it. Now shut up.
Right. Read the fucking room. And the hitchhiker's like, I mean, I beg to differ. He's like, I think it's a great fucking photo. Now give me $2 for it. But they refuse. And this upsets the hitchhiker. Kirk is like, I think the fuck not. Franklin, if you don't give this man this shit back right now. And so, naturally, what any sane person would do in this situation, the hitchhiker's offended. So he takes a piece of foil out of his little animal skin pouch and he lays it down. He lays down the photo that he just took of them. And then he puts some like gunpowder on top of the photo and he just lights it on fire. He sets a fire in the van like it's nothing. Everybody is hysterical, as they should be. He ends up balling up the foil and putting the fire out, but then he takes the straight razor out of his sock and he grabs Franklin's arm and just slices the shit out of it. So now, 3 business days later, Jerry is finally able to pull this fucking van over, and they throw the hitchhiker out onto the street. And they drive off at a snail's pace because the hitchhiker just keeps kicking the van and sticking his tongue out at them. And I know that you might be thinking like, oh, he's running next to the van. No.
He's skipping.
Yeah, it's very leisurely. The van is taking for fucking ever to pull off. But they finally get moving. And Jerry's like, that's the last hitchhiker I'll ever pick up. And I was like,
Yes.
how'd you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, Jerry. But the group continues on, and they end up stopping at a gas station that does not have gas, but they do have barbecue. Franklin is asking about an old house that his father owns. It was their grandfather's. And the old man gas station owner, they're asking him if he knows how to get there. He is very adamant that they should not be messing around old abandoned houses. He really discourages it. He says you never know what people are going to do if you go up on their property. I mean, he says it no less than 12 times. And he ultimately just recommends that they wait at the gas station, eat some barbecue, and wait for the transport truck to arrive to refill the station's gas so that they can refill their tank. Which is probably, in a reasonable situation, this is probably what I would have done. But the group doesn't do this. They decide that they're going to leave to go find Sally and Franklin's grandfather's abandoned place. And they're going to wait there. So as they're all loading back into the van, they notice that the hitchhiker has smeared some kind of symbol on the side of the van in his blood. But they get in and the group arrives to the abandoned house. They unload Franklin from the van, and then they each couple kind of goes off exploring, forgetting that Franklin exists. Just having a really great time without him. And he is stewing about this. Like, he's like throwing a tantrum like a child. But as he's rolling around, he finds a weird pile of animal bones on the porch, as well as some hung up in this like sort of like animal bone wind chime above the front door, and it really freaks him out. So he's a little on edge. Now, while all of this is happening, Kirk and Pam are like, we're gonna ditch you guys and we're gonna go find the creek that you guys told us was in this area, which ends up being totally dry, completely dry. But it's then that they spot another farmhouse within walking distance, and they notice that they're running a gas-operated generator, so they feel like, oh, well, they must have extra gas. Let's try to barter something for their gas.
Franklin.
Sure.
Why not?
Why the fuck not? So this is all really Kirk's idea. He's like, let's go barter. And Pam is like, we should leave. She's pretty adamant about this. We shouldn't fucking be back here. And she's right. So on this farmhouse property, they find an area with a bunch of old cars. And they keep moving, and then they get to the front door. Kirk knocks. He doesn't get any answers. And then a random tooth falls onto the porch.
Bye.
Exactly. What the hell? What are we talking about right now? Why are we still here? He ends up giving it to Pam, who is disgusted. And she's like, okay, fucking like enough is enough. Let's get the hell out of here. But Kirk isn't listening to Pam. And he takes it upon himself to open the front door and enter the house, calling out to the homeowners, yelling at the top of his lungs for no fucking reason.
When I say gone.
A tooth fell on the ground. I don't feel like I would need more than that. What are you waiting for? So he tells Pam, as he's looking around in the foyer of this house, he tells Pam to come check it out because it's covered in animal skins, animal skulls. And she's like, why the fuck would I do that? So she's outside on a bench swing, heated that she's still in this position. Kirk is looking around and he can see an empty doorway just straight into the house. It has a ramp leading into it, and there's a ton of different kinds of animal skulls on the wall. He can't see where the doorway leads because it's like you walk in and there's just a sharp turn to the left immediately. But he can hear what sounds like pigs squealing. So for some reason, this makes him enter the house. He trots along to the doorway, but when he gets there, because there is a ramp set up above the doorway, he ends up tripping on it. And as he's trying to catch his balance, he's trying to look down to see what he just tripped on. It's just in just no time. It's no time at all. Leatherface appears in the doorway, and before Kirk can react in any way, he uses a small sledgehammer to hit him over the head. There's blood spatter everywhere, and Kirk starts aggressively convulsing, and we hear that it is Leatherface making these squealing pig noises. And yeah, that's the first on-screen death.
Bye, Kirk.
I know.
We didn't really get to know you.
Not really at all. So he is laying there. Leatherface ends up having to hit him in the head again. And then he just kind of roughly tosses his body to the side. And the camera is like pulled back at this point. And we're just like watching this unfold. And we see Leatherface's body just kind of fill up the door frame. Like he's a pretty big guy.
Yes.
And then he just aggressively pulls a sliding metal door shut, slams it. Everything is then silent, and Kirk is gone. And it's a really, I mean, the whole thing took 20 seconds. I mean, it happened so quickly.
Your life was over.
I know. Because why did you come into this house?
Why? There were teeth. They were falling.
Bro. This scene is very iconic. When people think of this movie or talk about it or post anything about it, they typically post this scene. There's this scene and like one other one later. But it really is, to me, I think one of the best villain entrances in a horror movie that I have ever seen. I just thought, I mean, it's a really, really effective scene. And of course, we're calling him Leatherface, so that's we're gonna learn that it's Leatherface later. At this point, I assume that everybody knows what Leatherface looks like, but he is wearing a mask that is made of human flesh. He's wearing an apron because he's like a butcher in here, and he's just like really big in stature. So to make him look this big, he's actually, and you can kind of see it sometimes depending on the angle, he's wearing lifted shoes. There's a bit of a heel on the shoe to make him taller and more imposing. So now outside, Pam has no idea what's happened to Kirk. So she's calling out to him, and this is when she decides to enter the house. Now the door is closed to the room that Kirk went in, that Leatherface slammed shut. So Pam walks into a different area of the house, a different room. And she's hearing some little like rattling kind of noises. So she just bursts into this room that just has like a sheet hanging over the doorway. And she ends up tripping and falling onto a floor that is completely covered in animal bones and bird feathers. There's chickens and cages in the room. Just a lot going on. But it isn't until Pam takes a closer look around that she sees that these are not actually animal bones. They're human bones all over the room. So they're strewn all over the floor. But in addition to that, there's a lot of human teeth on the ground, as well as bones hanging from the ceiling. There's this elaborate sculpture made of bones. So Pam starts screaming because this is a lot. This is terrifying. So she tries to run out of the house, but that's when Leatherface yanks open that sliding metal door and runs after her. She is able to make it out of the front door, but he is too fast and he catches her around her waist. And he is able to lift her up off the ground, and she is flailing and she's kicking, but it's of no use. And that's another really iconic scene that that people will see or refer to when they talk about this movie. So we'll put both of those scenes on our Instagram when we make our post highlighting the episode. I feel like even if you've never seen this movie, you probably know both of those scenes. So he ends up bringing her through the doorway that we saw Kirk pull through. And inside, oh my God, I really hate this part. So there's meat hooks hanging from the ceiling. And he just carries Pam over to a meat hook like nothing. And he just ends up violently impaling Pam on one of these meat hooks, like in her back. So blood is shooting out on the wall behind her. It looks so incredibly painful. And she's not dead. She's just hooked, hanging here. We can also see that on the table in front of her is Kirk's body. So Leatherface hangs her up and leaves her there. And then he goes and he grabs his chainsaw and he starts it up and he starts to cut up Kirk's body with the chainsaw right in front of Pam.
That is traumatizing.
That is traumatizing. I can't imagine what it must feel like to have that hook in your back. I think about it every time I think about this scene, what the hell that must feel like. It has to be so fucking painful. I was actually reading, I can't remember if I put this in the fun facts or not, but I was actually reading how they created this scene. So she is on a harness that hooks, like it's like between her legs. It lifts her up between her legs and it's protected, like the wires are protected by like maxi pads. But apparently it was very painful. So her reaction that you see when she's like squirming on this hook, they're actually like genuine reactions because she was still in a lot of pain from these like wires digging into her in this harness. We cut back to the other members of the group. So who's left? So we have Sally is left, Franklin, her brother, and then Jerry, her boyfriend. And it's almost sunset. But at this point, Pam and Kirk have not come back. And so they're pretty anxious about that. So Jerry decides that before it gets too dark, he's going to go down to the creek to find them. He tells Sally to just wait here with Franklin and he ventures off alone. I wouldn't have done that. Well, I guess they're low on gas because I was like, I feel like I would have gotten in the van and just like kind of driven along the creek because now you're walking alone. Like everybody get in the fucking van. We're all going together.
So y'all like, we gotta find a house. I've been like, we don't have no gas. I don't like when they don't have nobody with no sense.
Well, that's a thing. So Franklin really wants to go to this house that his family owns.
Who cares? I don't even like you, boy.
Be nice.
No, I want to be alive.
Well, yeah. So, but it's funny because as they're driving to this house, I think Jerry says something to Franklin along the lines of, like, if we run out of gas going to this house, like, I'm going to kill you or something like that.
No, he says you're going to be pushing.
Oh, you're going to be pushing us on that fucking wheelchair.
Bitch.
And Franklin's salty about that. He didn't like that. But yeah, they do mention how crazy this situation is because y'all shouldn't be exerting any fucking effort in this van. You have no gas. And it's not just like you're kind of low on gas. The gas station owner told you, I have none. He was like, it may be here later today or tomorrow. I just wouldn't be using that gas. You don't know when the fuck this shit is going to come. And the house wasn't even that cool. And the creek was dried up. Waste of time. So now, Sally and Franklin are left alone to talk, which Sally does not want to do. So they are talking about the hitchhiker and the symbol that the hitchhiker left on the van. And Franklin's missing knife, and then Franklin's like, you didn't want me to come, did you? And
No.
he's like, are you mad at me?
Yes.
But she's like, no, I'm not mad. And she's like, I'm just tired, which we all know is code for
I wish you were dead.
I really fucking wish you were here right now. And so he's just really nagging and nagging and nagging. Like, I mean, it's true. He really is insufferable. Sally is really over it. You could just tell by her body language. Just you could tell that she really didn't want him to come on this trip. But we cut away from them for a minute, which is good because he's fucking insufferable. And we're going to check in with Jerry, who has inevitably ended up at that neighboring farm where Leatherface just killed his friends. Because I guess he got to the creek, saw that it was fucking empty, and he was like, okay, well, maybe they went to this farm for some reason?
Or maybe they were walking back. You know, like...
Okay, if you think that maybe they went to the farm, I'll accept that. Okay, whatever. This is what I can't accept. He gets to the house, and he's calling inside the house for Pam and Kirk. Nobody's answering. But he can hear little noises coming from inside the house. So he assumes that it's Pam and Kirk messing with him.
I would never think, oh, it's them joking. I would be like, oh, they're not here.
Right. I'm like, you're entering. So this is like kind of like an example of a movies are gonna movie type thing. Because what on earth would possess you to think that, one, Pam and Kirk are actually in this house? This is a stranger's house. He decides to enter the house. And he's like, come out. What are we doing right now? Like, you're so sure that they're in this house that you're willing to enter a stranger's house that you do not know in fucking middle of nowhere, Texas. You enter the house and then you're convinced that like somehow they knew you were coming.
So
And then like
they hid. They saw you. They obviously saw you walking. They're like, we're gonna hide and scare you in this house. People do stuff like that. You're like, oh yeah, it's fun. It's just like we're just we're horsing around. And I'm just like, I don't believe in that.
this is one little detail about the movie that I was just like really turned off by, because I'm like, okay, I get it. You have to have a way for Jerry to enter the house, okay? But like, it's not fucking believable to me that he would go inside assuming that Kirk and Pam are in this random person's house and they're playing some kind of practical joke on him. And you just walk into this house. And not just in the house, in the foyer. He ends up going into that room with the sliding metal door where Leatherface hung Pam and dismembered Kirk, but they aren't there anymore. But Jerry can hear some little noises coming from a deep freezer that's in the room. So he rushes over to open it, and there he finds Pam stuffed inside. She's alive, but barely. She is turning blue at this point. So she's in pretty rough shape. And so she jolts awake and she kind of flops around for a little bit before going limp again. And this alarms Jerry and it kind of distracts him. So he's entirely caught off guard when Leatherface comes running in and just hits him over the head with a small sledgehammer, the same way that Kirk was killed. He then pushes Pam back into the freezer, presumably to freeze to death. And that's like the second and third on-screen kills. And I've never seen a kill that was so fucking avoidable. Jerry.
It's so funny doing this movie right after The Hills Have Eyes because it's like the villains in these movies didn't really do much. These characters just like showed up and was like, you remember in Addams Family Value? I am a turkey. Kill me.
Yes.
It's just like that. They just appear in your house. And it's like, okay, well, since you're here.
I mean, might as well. We're going to learn this in a minute. Jerry also took the keys to the van with him when he left. He left Sally and Franklin alone with the van, but didn't leave them any keys to the van. So, like, nobody's using any thought, any reasoning, any smarts. Like, nobody has their thinking cap on. And I'm frustrated by that.
Why did he take the keys?
Why did he go in the house?
Why did he go in the house? Why didn't he look at the creek, see that it's completely barren, so they can't be here, and then it was like, "Wow, I wonder where they are," and then just go back and say, "Oh, I didn't see them."
Right. Go back to the van and be like, I didn't see them, guys. Let's think of something else. What would make you think that they're hiding out in this random farmhouse making noises to trick you? Okay. So now Leatherface is in a panic and he's freaking out a bit because there's a lot going on. He's making all these wailing noises, and it's clear in this moment that he's not just a killer in a mask. Something's off about him. I assume that he has a below average IQ. I assume that he is mentally handicapped in some way because of the way that he acts. He doesn't have like normal speech. He kind of is like all over the place. It's, I don't know. That's the vibe that I'm getting. Is that the vibe that you're getting?
That's the vibe.
I'm trying to like tiptoe around it because I don't want to offend anybody, but he's definitely not altogether there. But in this moment, we do get a closer look at him, and he is a bigger guy. He has on this human skin mask, and he starts doing some really weird fucking uncomfortable stuff with his mouth. I know that y'all can't see it, but Dante's recreating it, and I'm just as uncomfortable as I was when Leatherface was doing it. I don't like that. I think it's gross. So now we cut back to Sally and Franklin. It's full on dark now, and they are starting to panic because now not only are Pam and Kirk gone, but Jerry has not come back. Jerry is Sally's boyfriend. So she's like, I'm not leaving without Jerry. So they're blowing the car horn. They're screaming out Jerry's name. No one's answering, obviously. And Sally says they need to go looking for them because she's not leaving without Jerry.
Is the van even open? It's open. I would be sitting in the van, chilling.
The van is open, and it does, I guess they're running it on the battery right now because the headlights are on. So it is giving them some light. But Sally's like, I need to go find Jerry. Franklin is just such a huge coward. I mean, it's like an aggressive form of cowardice because he doesn't want to go looking for them. He wants to either wait there, I guess, in the hopes that they'll just come back at some point, or he wants to take the van to the gas station down the road and just kind of abandon them altogether.
You can't do that.
Well, Sally is getting very frustrated, but she's like, just give me the flashlight. I'll go on my own to find them. You don't have to come. But Franklin does not want to give her this flashlight. It's also at this point that Franklin realizes that Jerry took the keys to the van with him, and Franklin starts to have a fucking meltdown, a serious meltdown. He just starts screaming and laying on the horn.
Why do they make so much noise?
Sally's like, shut the fuck up! Shut up! And she tries to take the flashlight to go looking for them. Now remember, Franklin is at the van that has the headlights on. He has light right now. Sally's like, give me the fucking flashlight. He is like fighting her to not give her this flashlight.
Shit pushed him.
So they start, having like a serious tugging match over this flashlight. And Franklin's like, I'm not giving it up. Straight up. And so he's like, I'll just come with you, Sally. And she's like, you stupid fucking idiot. I cannot push you in your wheelchair down this hill that we're on. So you really can't come anyway. But Franklin's like, okay, well, that doesn't change the fact that I'm not giving up this fucking flashlight. So Sally is like, fuck it, because that's all that she can do at this point. She is like, I'll just go without the flashlight. And I know that she's heated beyond measure at this point because it's fucking pitch black out here. So she starts to walk off, and Franklin's like, okay, I'll go with you. But Sally is essentially walking off at this point without him, and Franklin starts like crying about how he can't keep up with her. And he's like, wait.
He's so aggravated.
He's just really like a whiny child. So eventually Sally does start to push Franklin, which looks so difficult, so laborious. I mean, it's literally through the woods and really rocky terrain. They're on a hill, and she's struggling so badly. She just keeps saying, Franklin, this is impossible. I cannot do it. And Franklin's like, just keep pushing. I feel like he should be able to
Will
do
himself.
right. Why aren't you wheeling yourself? I'm confused. Like you're able-bodied from the like waist up. Why can't you push yourself? Why is she struggling to push you through the fucking woods? So they're calling out for Jerry, getting no answers, but they can see that farmhouse in the distance, so they're heading that way. That's when Franklin tells Sally to stop because he heard something. And maybe an iota of a second after he says that, Leatherface pops up in front of them and just starts chainsawing Franklin to death. I mean, he is giving him the business with this chainsaw, hacking him up. Franklin is like in pieces at this point. And this is the fourth on-screen kill. I mean, he was really a sitting duck in that chair. I mean, there was like literally nothing that either of them could have done.
We couldn't take another minute of Franklin.
I couldn't. I really couldn't. As soon as I saw that he was making her push him through the fucking Rocky Mountains, I was really fucking aggravated with him. And then she's like, this is impossible. And he's like, well, just keep pushing. I was like, when are you gonna die?
He's the first chainsaw too, huh?
He's the first chainsaw kill, yes. Despite this movie being called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he is the only person killed with a chainsaw in the movie.
But that's just how much we didn't like Franklin. It was like, name it after that shit.
I know, just fucking, he massacred Franklin with that chainsaw. That's it. That's the fucking name. So thus far, he's only, like, he dismembered Kirk with the chainsaw, but yeah, Franklin is the only one that he kills with the chainsaw. It is
Traumatizing.
Sally is very much traumatized. So it's one of those scenes. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre in general is one of those movies where they really don't show a lot of gore, right? You don't see, because Franklin's getting chainsawed to death and everything, but they're not showing, you don't see a drop of blood. You don't see him get dismembered. Everything is kind of in shadow, or you see the camera's like focused on Leatherface, or it's focused on Sally, or it's like pulled back far. The movie is just like that. It does that with the camera work. A lot of that is because Tobe Hooper was actually, he was trying to get this movie released as a PG movie.
So he was on that stuff.
So he was trying to cut it and like not have any kind of gore. That's why you don't see a lot of the kills, or you don't see like a ton of blood. Like even when he's chainsawing Kirk after he's dead, you don't see any blood flying everywhere. The MPAA was like, that's cute, but no, it's a fucking R-rated movie.
You doofus. It's so stupid.
Yeah, what the hell are you talking about?
Get out of our office.
So it's funny, Wes Craven actually did the same thing with The Hills Have Eyes, and we didn't talk about that one in that movie, but when he was making The Hills Have Eyes, he was trying to get it cut down to like a PG.
The man who wanted them to eat a baby?
The MPAA was like, it's an X. And he was like, wait, I can fix it. They were like, nice try, buddy boy.
You crucified one man and you tried to eat a baby.
He had to cut a lot of stuff down in order for them to release it as an R-rated movie. And I thought that was so funny because remember when we were talking about the movie X, why it was titled X? The movie would have gone into the rotation with the porn circuit. And it's not good enough to compete with porn. Like, if that's what you're going to the movies for, Like, if you're looking for an X movie to be a porno, you're not going to watch them eat a baby. I'm sorry. So he had to really fight to get it to, like, an R. But yeah, no, he was going for a fucking PG movie. Sir. But yeah, so Sally is traumatized by this, watching her brother get hacked up. And so she runs through the woods with Leatherface right behind her. So she's trying to run, but she keeps getting caught in all these tangles of branches. When she finally makes it out, she runs to the farmhouse for help, not knowing that it's Leatherface's house. She runs inside and she slams and locks the door behind her, but Leatherface just starts using his chainsaw to saw the door apart. So Sally runs upstairs looking for help when she comes across this very old man who's may or may not be alive. We can't tell. I mean, he's sitting in the rocking chair across from a rotting corpse of a woman who looks like one of the corpses that was stole from the cemetery earlier. And he could be a corpse too, for all we know. That's how fucking shriveled and old he looks. So she's terrified. So she runs back downstairs, but Leatherface catches her on the stairs as she's going down. He's coming up. He has his chainsaw. So she does some of the realest shit I've ever seen in a horror movie. She runs back up those stairs, and instead of doing some dumb shit like trying to hide or lock herself in a bedroom, she jumps out the fucking window straight up. She runs, no hesitation. She doesn't even like 1, 2, 3. She just runs straight through that bitch out and lands 2 stories down on the ground. She dives out of this fucking window, and I was like, good for her, because I know that shit hurt.
I gotta get out this house.
He has a chainsaw.
And that's some new, like...
No, it is. That's some new shit.
I can't handle that. It's too much.
That's one thing that this movie pioneered, was the use of, like, tools as murder weapons. Like, not a knife, not a gun, not a hook or anything like that. Like, fucking, like, I'm gonna use a chainsaw and a hammer, a sledgehammer to kill people. And it was like, it really wasn't like a popular thing. So when he walked up to her with that chainsaw, I'm sure she was like,
nope.
Exactly.
So I could be potted meat like Franklin? No way.
Absolutely not. So she's hurt but alive, and so she is able to pull herself up and start running again. Leatherface runs down the stairs, and he's not far behind her, and so they end up getting into a chase scene through the woods again. So Leatherface ends up chasing her all the way back to the gas station, where she runs into the gas station owner from earlier. As soon as she runs into him, Leatherface vanishes. And I know that she's too upset to really think about that any harder, but it's kind of weird. So she keeps telling the owner to call the police because somebody's chasing her. He killed her brother, he killed her boyfriend. He just really needs to call the police. She's very hysterical. But then the old man tells her, like, baby, there's no phone in here. But he just says, wait right here. I'm going to get my truck, and then we can drive to a neighbor's house who does have a phone. So he walks out, leaving the door open. It's a little tense for a minute, but then he does come back. He comes inside. She has one single moment of relief, but then she looks in his hands, and he has this big burlap sack that he is trying to put her in. And so she starts freaking out, obviously. So he's telling her that if she does what he says, everything's going to be okay. So she grabs a knife. But the old man is he's able to knock it out of her hand with a broom. And then he proceeds to kind of hit her with the broom a little bit, like broom side, cackling to himself the whole time until essentially she's subdued. And I was like, girl, you just jumped out of a second-story window. I mean...
She was tired.
I mean, she must have been, because I was like, it's the fucking straw part of the broom. That shit doesn't... It's straw.
Cindy, this is straw.
What you wrote from Callista Flockhart? That's how I felt. I was like, Sally, what's going on, girl? Stand up. So she's on the floor.
Getting beat.
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of awake, kind of just laying there. But he then proceeds to tie her hands behind her back and stuff a rag into her mouth. He then ties it there and stuffs her head first into the burlap sack and just drags her out to his car. So as he's driving her, he keeps poking her with the broom handle and just kind of laughing to himself. Then, walking along the road, we see the hitchhiker from earlier. And the old man jumps out of the car and starts roughing him up, just kind of calling him an idiot, scolding him about how he almost got caught at the cemetery, thus revealing that the hitchhiker is the one that's been robbing the graves. So then the old man gets back in his car with the hitchhiker jumping into the truck bed, and he drives them all to the farmhouse. So when they're getting there, the old man is scolding the hitchhiker for leaving his brother alone, revealing at this point that they're all related, and the hitcher is Leatherface's brother. So presumably, Leatherface is the one that makes the good head cheese. So they then enter the house with the old man fussing about how Leatherface saw through their front door, which fair.
Because you live here.
Don't you have any pride in your home? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? So then Leatherface appears. He's done a quick costume change.
Because if Leatherface gonna do anything, he's gonna give you looks.
It's looks upon looks. So he is now donning a woman skin mask, and he has on a wig and an apron. And it's giving psychotic, like Norman Bates level psychotic with that fucking wig on. This is when the old man starts to beat up Leatherface with the broom handle, and it's clear that Leatherface is pretty scared of the old man. Meanwhile, the hitchhiker is tying Sally up to a chair that has the arms of the chair are made of a woman's corpse's arms, which is unnecessary.
The set design here was crazy.
Absolutely wild. So the old man then tells the hitchhiker to go fetch his grandpa, and the hitchhiker asks his brother to help him. And this is actually the first time in the film that we hear the name Leatherface mentioned. His brother refers to him as Leatherface. So they carry their grandfather downstairs, and we see that it is that same extremely old man that Sally ran into earlier that night. So he isn't a corpse, he actually is alive. So while all of this is happening, the old man keeps telling Sally everything will be okay. And he's like, we'll get you something to eat. And I was like, I wouldn't eat a damn thing out this nasty ass house. I wouldn't eat you couldn't give me a Tic Tac in this house. Honestly, I would rather him keep beating me with that fucking broom than to make me eat what is being offered in this house, because who knows what the hell it is. Because I think when she does have food on her plate, it's just like mystery sausage. Who knows what the hell that is. But once they get Grandpa downstairs and in front of Sally, Leatherface ends up slicing one of her fingers and puts it in their grandfather's mouth so he can suck on her blood. It's really sick. It's disgusting. The slurping noises that he's making. So Sally is so horrified by this that she passes out. And I don't blame her, because I wouldn't want to watch this nasty shit either. So when Sally comes to, she's sitting at a dinner table and she looks around and she just starts screaming. And I don't blame her, because they've given her a plate of sausage. And there's like a fucking skeleton in the middle of the table. His grandpa is there, Leatherface.
And you know it's stinking, huh?
No, Dante, let's talk about it in the fun facts, because yes, I do know that it fucking reeks. reeks in here. And so I was like, can we just take a moment to give a round of applause to Marilyn Burns? Because in this moment, her scream is so long and so blood curdling. It's just like the definition of a scream queen. Like, this is like, it really was fantastic to watch. I mean, she did such a good job. And her tied to this chair, screaming at this dinner table, is another scene that people remember from this movie. Her like freaking out trying to get free, and this scream that she does. And I was like, what? She did a really, really good job. I thought she was a really good final girl in this movie. But Leatherface and the hitchhiker are having a good time, just kind of laughing at her, kind of jeering, touching her face, touching her lips, touching her hair. It's really disgusting. They're both really, really disgusting. And Sally is begging the old man to stop them. But the hitchhiker says that the old man has no power because he's just the cook. And he and Leatherface do all the work. The old man tells the hitchhiker he says, "Shut up, you bitch hog." And I was like,
I don't like that.
I wonder if that was in the script or if that was improvised. But after they bicker for a minute, the old man reveals that he actually doesn't take any pleasure in killing. But he's like, some things you just have to do. And Sally just starts screaming hopelessly again. The old man then tells them to kill her quickly and get it over with because he doesn't want them to torture her. But that's when the hitchhiker suggests letting Grandpa kill this one, which sends Sally into a frenzy, probably because she's like, ew, I don't want him to like suck on me again. But the old man reveals that Sally shouldn't be too scared because Grandpa is the best killer of all of them. And back in the day, it only took him one hit when they were working at the slaughterhouse to kill the cows. It says he was able to kill 60 cattle in 5 minutes. So they were like, it's going to be over really soon. You'll be fine. Like, just kind of accept this. So they untie Sally and they bring her over and kneel her in front of Grandpa with a bucket under her to catch the blood. So now Grandpa, who is sitting in a chair like a fucking dry rotted rubber band, he can't hold the mallet in his hand. He's just too weak. He's barely alive. So he keeps dropping it and dropping it and dropping it. And Leatherface just keeps trying to help him. And so he ends up giving Sally a few light whacks, and it causes her to bleed, but they don't kill her. They don't knock her out. And so in all this commotion, Sally is able to break free and straight up doing the smartest thing she could do, keeping it fucking real. She doesn't take time to like run around the house to try to find an exit door, like front door, back door. No, she just jumps out the nearest window.
I gotta get out of this house.
She's like, I don't give a fuck. She jumps clean through. And luckily she's on the first floor this time. So she is up and running. Now, the hitchhiker is right behind her. And he's reaching out and he's slashing her with a knife. And just when he's caught her, an 18-wheeler rounds the corner on the road that they've made it to and just flattens the hitchhiker. That is the 5th on-screen kill.
Very, very, very abruptly.
It's so abrupt and he's so flattened. I mean, he's so crampled under this fucking 18-wheeler. The trucker gets out to see what's going on, but as soon as Leatherface rounds the corner of his truck, the trucker immediately turns around. He doesn't take a second to look to figure out what's going on. No, he immediately turns around and jumps his ass back into that truck. And he is able to pull Sally into the truck too. So now Leatherface is swiping at the door with his chainsaw, but they don't drive off and instead climb out of the passenger door. Why did they do that? Did that make sense to you? Am I missing something?
I think they wanted to do that last scene and get more. I don't know. Like, I just thought that was strange.
Yeah, they don't, and he doesn't go off in the car because Leatherface is like chainsawing the door, but not any like real capacity. It's just kind of superficially marking the door. So I feel like he had enough time to start the truck again. And I was, I'm not a trucker, so I don't really know what goes all into driving trucks. I don't know if it's difficult to start once you've stopped. But yeah, they climb out the passenger door. And on his way out, the trucker grabs a really large wrench, and he and Sally just start running down the road. When Leatherface is getting kind of close, the truck driver just turns around and launches his wrench at Leatherface. It hits him right in his cranium, and Leatherface falls backwards. And his chainsaw ends up landing on his thigh, fucking him up really badly. I mean, he screams.
I love that shot, though, of him just being like, what?
The way he hit him square in between his eyes with that wrench was magnificent. So Leatherface then gets up and he still tries to hobble after the two. Like, bro, know when to quit. Just then, a pickup truck driver comes down the road, and as the trucker it just runs out of the movie. The trucker is gone. We don't ever see him again. He just keeps running offset and goes home.
He was like, you're not looking for me, you're looking for this girl.
He was like, so let me get my ass out of here. So Sally jumps into the back of the pickup truck, narrowly escaping Leatherface, and she just laughs giddily as she escapes with her life. She and the truck driver look back as Leatherface is left spinning and flailing his chainsaw through the air in frustration and anger. And then the movie cuts to black and the credits start to roll. And that scene of her in the back of the truck and him like flailing this chainsaw is like the next, it's a really iconic shot.
Yes.
So yeah, kill count. So not a ton of kills. The movie only has 5 on-screen kills. So Kirk, Jerry, Pam, Franklin, and the hitchhiker. The Rotten Tomatoes is a 89% critic and an 82% audience,
Which is
really
high.
good. Yeah. The IMDb is a 7.4 out of 10 with 182,000 reviews. So some fun facts. The movie went through a very, very hellish production. A lot of things went wrong. They had a very, very, very tiny budget. And so it really affected the way that they filmed the movie as well. So they had a lot of concerns because equipment rentals were very expensive. So because of that, Tobe Hooper decided to have the crew film the movie 7 days a week for 16 hours a day. So the conditions were very tough. So it was in the middle of Texas. So temperatures would peak at like 110 degrees because they were filming also in the summer. Gunnar Hansen, who plays Leatherface, so he recalls that it was like 95 to 100 degrees every day during filming. And another reason that production was like very hellish, they didn't have any money to change things. So it ended up happening with Leatherface, and it ended up happening with Sally at a certain point. They weren't allowed to take their costumes to be washed because there was a fear that they would get stolen. There was a fear that the color would run. They would change colors, and so it would mess up the continuity. So this filming was 7 days a week, 16 hours a day for like a month. And Leatherface was not allowed to wash his costume at all. So when you talk about funky, it was very difficult for people to be around him because he smelled really bad. So most of the filming took place in a farmhouse, and the farmhouse was filled with furniture that was constructed from animal bones, and then latex material that was used to give the appearance of like human skin as the upholstery. So the house was not cool. There was no air conditioning, obviously. There was very, very little ventilation. They used blackout curtains to make it appear that it was night in the house, even when they were filming in the middle of the day. So it's 110 degrees with blackout curtains over the window. So they were really baking in this house. Additionally, the crew covered the walls with animal blood that they got from a local slaughterhouse. And the art director, Robert Burns, he actually drove around the countryside collecting the remains of cattle and other animals in various stages of decomposition, which he then littered on the floors of the house. So by the time they got to that dinner scene, the room was filled with dead animals. They had to, it was so hot in there, and they had to do like different takes and stuff. So the food just sat on the table. So it started to rot. So there's dead animals, there's rotting food, there's animal blood on the walls. Leatherface is not allowed to wash his costume. There's no air conditioning, no electric fans.
Those screams.
Those screams were fucking real. So everyone later recalled that the stench from all of this, the body odor, the rotting food, the animal carcasses, it was so terrible that crew members were actively getting sick from the smells, and actors would have to excuse themselves from the room, go vomit, and then come back to finish shooting the scene. So the actor that played the hitchhiker, Edwin Neal, he said that, quote, filming that scene was the worst time of my life, and I fought in Vietnam with people trying to kill me. So I guess that shows how bad it was.
I would rather go to war
than be in this funky ass, musty ass, nasty ass, rotting food ass, animal carcass ass fucking room. And I was like, Tobe Hooper was wildin', because that's really, really horrible working conditions. So in the scene where Leatherface slashes Sally's finger to let Grandpa suck on it, there was initially a tube of fake blood that was on her finger, and it kept clogging. And so they kept doing several takes, and the tubing wasn't working right. And so remember, they're in this house with temperatures up to 110 degrees, and there's rotting food and stuff everywhere. Everybody was kind of on the brink of like madness at a certain point. So Gunnar Hansen, who plays Leatherface, actually just like ended up slitting her finger for real. So he just cut her finger open. So all that blood you see is her real blood. And so he just kind of didn't care anymore. He was just trying to get through the scene as quickly as he could, because the sequence was shot like back, it was like shot at the back end of a 27-hour workday at that point. So yeah, he was just like, I did what I had to do. He also said that there isn't much acting going on in that dinner scene. Like all the horrific screams and stuff, they're like, that's fucking real.
It's just us dealing with the smell.
Right. So the movie has been extremely influential in the horror genre, and that's why we chose it for this Hellbilly Deluxe month, and that's why we chose it as the anchor movie, because all the movies that we've covered, it's just kind of all going back to this movie being the inspiration. So Wes Craven, of course, crafted his 1977 The Hills Have Eyes as an homage to the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Ridley Scott actually cited Tobe Hooper's film as an inspiration for his 1979 film Alien. French director Alexandre Aja credited it as an early influence on his career. And then horror filmmaker and musician Rob Zombie also sees it as a major influence on his work, and that includes the films House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, which we just covered. So It's just a couple of accolades. So Entertainment Weekly actually ranked the film 6th on its 2003 list of top 50 cult films. It was selected as the greatest horror film of all time in 2 Total Film polls, which is a British film magazine. So once in 2005 and again in 2010. And in 2010, the judging panel included directors like John Carpenter, Wes Craven, and George A. Romero. It was in Time's top 25 horror films of all time, Empire Magazine's list of 500 greatest movies of all time, as well as their 50 greatest independent films of all time. The Guardian ranked it in their top 25 horror films of all time. Slant Magazine lists it as the greatest horror film of all time. It's also on Complex's list of scariest movies of all time. Thrillers and Esquire also has it on their best horror movies of all time list. The film was originally banned in Finland, and it didn't get released there until 25 years after the movie's initial release. And then finally, so that close-up at the end of the movie, it's probably, I would say, one of the goriest parts of the whole movie, and it's really quick. But when Leatherface gets hit in the head with that wrench and he falls down and that chainsaw ends up cutting into his thigh, it was actually the very last shot to be filmed. And the actor was wearing a metal plate over his leg, which was then covered with a piece of meat and a blood bag. But the screams that you hear from the actor are actually genuine screams of pain, because as the chainsaw is repeatedly touching the plate that's over his leg, the friction caused the plate to get extremely hot, and it actually burned his leg. So that scream is real, and if you watch it, you'll hear the scream, and it sounds really genuine. Leatherface in general speaks very low. He kind of mumbles a lot, makes little noises and stuff. He never actually speaks, but that scream was loud and fucking in color. Like, it was serious. So that's all that I have for fun facts.
Oh, I was just gonna say that the guy who played Grandpa was actually like this 20-year-old dude.
Yeah, so the guy that plays Grant, and that's why he looks so
Dead?
dead bright, because he's wearing a lot of makeup. It's like heavy prosthetics. And he actually hated it.
Of course. Because it stinks in there.
Yeah, he actually, because he put on this makeup and he hated it so much, he said that he was never going to put it on again. So all of the scenes with him in it, they just had to shoot them all back to back. They just had to get all of his filming done in that costume at one time. So I think that's the time that they're talking about. So when Leatherface is like him cutting Marilyn Burns' finger like that, when he's like, it was at the end of a 27-hour workday, I mean, that's what they're talking about, this like dinner scene, because they had to get through it all, because the actor was like, I'm only putting this makeup on one time and one time only. So we need to get it fucking done. And it was very similar for Leatherface too. So he wasn't allowed to take the mask off at all unless it was like a 15-minute break or greater. But because they were trying to rush through the film so much, he was like, they never took longer than 5-minute breaks. So he was like, he essentially had to wear this mask the entire time. And so everybody really had like a pretty miserable time shooting this movie.
And then you think about like that, and like they ain't make no money off it.
They didn't make any money off of it, no. So I think, and I have to go back and look, but I think that the guy that played Leatherface might have only made like $1,000.
Do you understand how I would have quit midway through?
Good for them, because they really sold being really fucking miserable in here. Crazy miserable. But yeah, I don't know if I could have done it. But yeah, so with all that being said, what do you think? Do you think it's a hit or a miss?
This is definitely a hit. Everyone should see it at least once. I probably want to see it twice because it's just too much for me. I don't like gross stuff.
It's fair.
But I think it's great. And it is scary. It's very scary. And I'm not shocked that it made number one on all those lists.
Mm-hmm.
And it also kind of proves I know you talk about this a lot. You don't like a lot of kills. So it's like it's just enough, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just enough. No superfluous characters. So definitely everyone should watch this.
I agree. I think this movie is a definite hit. I think that it is great. I think that it has great twists and turns. I think the characters, even though they're not on screen a lot of the time, even though you don't really learn a lot about them, I feel like they're really flushed out as far as, you know, what they do, what their role is in this family. I think that Sally is a phenomenal final girl. I think that she deserves all the credit for what she was able to achieve sitting in this funky ass, nasty ass room with this open fucking wound on her finger for the sake of like delivering this performance. So I just think that I think it's such a hit. It is gross. It does have its moments, but it's not a ton of gore. So if gore bothers you, I think that you'll be okay watching this one. And yeah, it's only 5 kills. I think that each kill is like, you know, pretty unique. And I just definitely recommend it. I do think that everybody should see it. It's been the inspiration for so many movies. And yeah, it's the perfect way to end our Hellbilly Deluxe month.
Yes. So please let us know which one was your favorite.
Yeah.
We'll have to put a post up. As always, we love to hear from you and what you're thinking about the episodes or just new ideas for episodes. So you can hit us up on our Instagram as well as our Facebook and our YouTube channel. And those are all Did You Get That on Film? We also have an email address. Also, Did You Get That on Film at gmail.com. So just reach out in any way you can. We love to hear from you guys. We love to get the feedback or just stop by and say hi. And if you don't mind, leave us a review. It helps spread the word of the podcast to reach it to new listeners. So please, please, please.
And so that's it for us, guys. And we will be back next week with a brand new theme and a brand new episode. So we look forward to seeing you then. Bye.